I'm just gonna just give me a second, please. Okay, I think we're good. We're back on YouTube. I'm just going to quickly check something that we can continue. There's something I try not to get deeply involved in, and it comes to this whole thing about River State, and it's because the day I will talk about the whole thing about River State, go, I want River people to be there because now they matter. So I may not want to get into how the people acquired properties there in the first place and how that affected everything. But actually, okay, no, maybe I will talk about it briefly. Two things, let me say it this way. Two things I think affected the whole reverse stuff. Number one, during the war, Biafran forces, Igbos, burnt buildings belonging to Rivers people and Akwa Ibom people and CO. Let's just say that they burnt houses belonging to COR people. That's Cross River or Goja Rivers provinces. So Akwa Ibom people, Cross River people, Rivers people, they burned their houses. That's number one. You find it in a book by Neville Graham Douglas. It's called Ojuko's Rebellion and World Opinion. If you join Redomi Global now, you can access that book free of charge. Okay, you're not gonna have to pay for it. And the reason we put that on the Telegram channel, Redomi Global, we put it out because number one, the book is not available. You can't find it, but at least you can all read what's it called, the e-version. So please take advantage of it. The second part, and I'm already talking about it. 1 second, please. I hope people are good on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, I apologize. Sorry about that. It's technical issues. It gets better. Well, thank you for being here. All right. So the first thing is, if you read Ojuko's Rebellion and World Opinion by Neville Graham Douglas, he mentioned how houses belonging to folks from Rivers, present-day Rivers State, Bayelsa State, Akwa Ibom and Cross River State, houses belonging to folks like that were burnt down by Igbo soldiers during the Biafran War in their region. That's one. Maybe they're not using that one to take over their own property. You can ask them. The second one is that some of the properties, the way they were acquired, also left a bitter taste in people's mouth. So there was money belonging to. It's a different topic on its own, to be honest. But just very quickly, the money belonged to the eastern region. You could take loans to buy houses or lands, and folks complained that it seemed that the folks who had access to the loans were almost exclusively Igbos, and so they had the financial muscle to now move into their spaces to buy up lands that they could not buy because they had no access to those loans, even though the money that was being loaned out belonged to the region and they were all members or part of the region. Is that enough justification to now hold on to other people or seize properties belonging to other people? I'm not justifying anything. I'm just explaining what their reasons have been. I'm trying not to go into books because it's going to take us off of this. So that's why they said, it's our land after all, and the way you even got this thing was fraudulent. That was their own explanation. But what Gowon said in that interview that we just read from Chinua Achebe's book is that some of those properties that the government took over, the government itself took over in Rivers State, the government paid for it, by buying it off Igbos wanted to sell. But it doesn't change the fact that a lot of places were also taken over by folks in Rivers State. And that just give you, what I just did now, to give you a very quick example of some of their reasons, right? Or what could be their reasons for doing what they did. We're going to come back to Rivers State. You know what? Let's since we're on Port Harcourt now, let me read some things about Port Harcourt. Then we're going to go to the book by Shehu Shagari later. Give me a second. So where you have the most contention was actually in Rivers State. Give me a second, please. Okay, so it says some individuals exploited the situation by buying these properties at market rates or using them as collateral for business loans from sympathetic banks. So what they're saying basically, Prince, welcome, Ẹkáàbọ. What they're saying is that there were people from those areas who, those guys were a crazy one, who claimed the properties and then drew up some form of documentation and then took the documents to some banks, certain banks, to obtain loans. So the property then went to the banks as collateral. Guys, you can say whatever you want, but let me tell you something. If people come to your land and they begin to do win the war meat, when the war is over, you will also find a way to get your own pound of flesh. That's the truth. We can all pontificate and have moral arguments about these things, but you went into their land, you killed them in their own land, you fed them with their own flesh. After what happened before the war, you now went back to the place and said that you are the same, you are brothers. Okay, I don't want to stay on Rivers, to be honest. We'll have a Rivers session later. Let's get into what happened in other parts of Nigeria. So I'm going to read a book called Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria. I mentioned it earlier. This document was from 8 October 1969. Umbo. So there's a lot of things here, but I don't want to start what I won't be able to finish. I'm just looking for something direct about what we're thinking about. If you're on TikTok, please power tap. This thing is showing inactivity. It might go off if we don't do that. So please, let's power tap on TikTok. We're wrapping up now, but I think we're going to wrap up on a very high note. This is all about Azikiwe and Ojukwu. So I'm trying to... We need to have a session on this because it's very heavy. But I want to go straight to the part that has to do with this whole thing about... Okay, let me just read this part. I think it's shorter. I observed also the business-like manner in which the state governments handled the properties of displaced persons. It was at Benin that this system was first explained to me, but it is widespread in all the states of the Federation, excepting the Rivers State, Southeastern State, and East Central State. Again, Rivers State is presently Rivers and Bayelsa states. Southeastern State is presently Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu, and Imo states. And East Central State, Southeastern State, I'll take it all over again. Rivers State is presently Bayelsa and Rivers State. Southeastern State is presently Akwa Ibom and Cross River State. East Central State is presently Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Imo, and Enugu states. So Southeastern State at the time is run from Southeastern region today. So it says here, I'm going to go about from the beginning. It says it was at Benin that this system was first explained to me, but it is widespread in all the states of the Federation, excepting the River State, Southeastern State, and the East Central States, which are just finding their feet administratively. Comprehensive records were kept, which indicated the name of the owner, valuation, location, address, and rent receivable for each property. Abandoned properties committees were established to take custody of this. The damaged ones were repaired and having been made tenantable, they were rented out, and their rents collected were put together in a fund administered by the appropriate local authority. After deducting legitimate expenses in respect of repairs and maintenance, including commissions to realtors, the balance was credited to the accounts of the owners to await their return. This means that in certain cases, some of the displaced persons had earned from £100 to £1,500 held in trust for them by the various state governments. In Kano, for example, £83,000 was collected. In most of the northern states, over £40,000 was collected. The same holds good for Western State, Midwestern State, and Lagos State. From the above, I am fair and reasonable in concluding that the intention of the government concerned is to give assurance to displaced persons. This didn't just happen in Lagos. Lagos was about £250. Kano was about £83,000. So what they're saying, they're explaining the system and how they made it work. So the government created a abandoned properties committee. They took over those properties, fixed them up, rented the apartments out, made money, and deposited the money after deducting expenses, for realtors and for maintenance and things like that. Deposited the money so that when the Igbo person returns to Yoruba land, it's not just Lagos, Western region, Midwest, Lagos, North. When they returned, they found their properties well kept, but beyond that, they also had money waiting for them. I would think anybody that experienced that kind of goodwill would be appreciative and say, oh, these people are good because they're trying to also welcome me back home. Prof, it's Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria, Volume 2. One second. There's something I'm holding back on, but I want to be sure. Give me a second. There's a small little information I'm not sure of. Number, and that information has to do with the person who is actually talking, because this is actually an interview. I change the DP. I was right. It was Zeke speaking. I wasn't sure, but I'm glad I'm sure about it now. It was Zeke speaking. This was 8th October 1969. Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria, Volume 2, by A.H.M. Kirk Green. Someone says, I beg, who rented these properties? Because Igbo said they were the richest and owners of Lagos. No, some of them also owned houses. So the point is, the governments of the regions took over the houses, fixed them up, rented out those houses to people. When Igbos came back, the houses were in good condition, and there was also money. There was money waiting for them. So I've read from Gowon's perspective. I've read Brigadier Mobolaji Johnson's perspective, and I'm reading Zeke's perspective, because at this time, in the beginning, Zeke was not on the Nigerian side, but he's now reporting that having moved over from Biafra into Nigeria, he noticed what Nigeria was doing about the properties that the Igbos left when they returned to the eastern region. And just in case you're just coming in, I think I'm going to read it. I'm going to have a full session on this later though, but I'm just going to focus on this one for now. Let me go back to the to like 2 paragraphs before the one I read earlier. It says, my considered opinion after my observations is that there is a genuine desire which is widespread throughout Nigeria for the following changes. Number 1, restoration of peace in Nigeria, whose territorial integrity shall be preserved intact, and so on and so forth. Number 2, reconciliation of Nigeria with what is left of rebel-held territory, and so on and so forth. Number 3, restitution to all Nigerians, including the rebels, without any distinction or discrimination. That was a mistake Nigeria should not have made, but we made it. because even Buhari still paid Biafran soldiers, believe it or not. Buhari did this one, not in 1983. I'm saying in 2015 that I just returned. In the term that he had 2015 to 2023, he paid Biafran soldiers. I don't know why people don't mention this goodwill, these good things. Folks just like the idea of, see what they did to me. Buhari paid Biafran soldiers. These were rebels. Anyway, number 4, rehabilitation of all Nigerians, including the rebels, for losses. I'll take that again. Rehabilitation of all Nigerians, including the rebels, for losses sustained by them, either through death or injury or destruction of property during the Civil War. All the heads of government and natural rulers, that's our Oba, together with other distinguished personalities, including those in authority, made it clear to me, who is me, Zik, they made it clear to me that they desired the Igbo and non-Igbo displaced persons to return to their places of domicile and resume their normal activities. They gave assurance that they shall be secure in their persons and in their properties. This strengthened my faith in the emergence of a new Nigeria that will be united, indivisible. He's always using that phrase. I mean, those words, but let's just read what he had to say. So he's talking about the emergence of a new Nigeria that will be united, indivisible, indestructible, and perpetual. By the way, in case you are hearing me for the first time, the reason I have a problem with Zik saying this thing in 1969 is that the reason for the war was what he's saying. This phrase, I mean, these words, indivisible, perpetual, indissoluble, these words were the words they used in 1954. At the Constitutional Conference, when Awo suggested the inclusion of secession clause in the Nigerian Constitution, Zik was shouting, indivisible, indissoluble. We are still here. But anyway, that's what he said at the time. Let's continue. We are still reading Zik's account. The Federal Public Service Commission assured me most solemnly that all displaced persons who left their employment either in the public service or in the diplomatic service or in the service of statutory bodies as a result of the Civil War shall be reinstated, and they were, by the way, and their period of absence shall be officially treated as leave without pay. I was assured that the promotion prospects of those concerned will not be adversely affected. They would enjoy the benefits of an innovation now introduced as notional promotion. Nigeria bent backwards for these guys, which is good if you are doing it for people that can acknowledge good. Sorry about that. Where were we? I observed also the business-like manner in which the state governments. It was at Benin that this system was first explained to me, but it is widespread in all the states of the Federation, excepting the River State. I mentioned earlier, that's River State, present River State and Bayelsa State. Southeastern states, that's present the Akwa Ibom State and Cross River State. And East Central states, that's Abia, Enugu, Anambra, Ebonyi, and Imo State, which are just finding their feet administratively. In other words, the old Eastern region was just getting back, on their feet at the time. But while the old Eastern region in the 3 states were now getting themselves back together, comprehensive records were kept in the other regions, as in the north, in the west, in Lagos, and in the Midwest. Comprehensive records were kept, which indicated the name of the owner, valuation of the property, location, address, and rent receivable for each property. Abandoned property committees were established to take custody of this. The damaged ones were repaired, and having been made tenantable, they were rented out, and the rents collected were pooled together in a fund administered by the appropriate local authority. After deducting legitimate expenses in respect of repairs and maintenance, including commissions to realtors, the balance was credited to the accounts of the owners to await their return. This means that in certain cases, some of the displaced persons had earned from £100 to £1,500 held in trust for them by the various state governments. In Kano, for example, £83,000 was collected. In most of the northern states, over £40,000 was collected. The same holds good for Western State, Midwestern State, and Lagos State. From the above, by the way, in Lagos State, according to Governor Mobolaji Johnson, they got £250,000 for Igbos who were returning to Lagos, and they had fixed up or administered 3,000 properties belonging to them at the time. Yet, no gratitude. Anyway, from the above, I am fair and reasonable in concluding that the intention of the government concerned is to give assurance to displaced persons that not only are their persons safe and secure, but their properties are also intact with some accumulated earnings in addition. Therefore, it is not far-fetched for me to continue to appeal to the displaced Igbo and non-Igbo people to return to the Federation instead of their wandering in the bush aimlessly like vagabonds, running from place to place without comfortable shelter and sufficient food to eat. When was this? 8 October 1969. Even the Cameroon, where they were very angry with them, they still collected £83,000. I just think it's better to be appreciative, to be grateful, than to be an ingrate. So that's about Mumbo. You are good. You have been so good to me. Lord, I can't believe. I'm going to read another book. I have a number of books open, so I'm just looking at the time. That's the reason. If you notice, I'm Motinkpe. But we're still going to read a few more things before we go. I want to read something to you from Just Before Dawn by Kole Omotosho. By the way, just Before Dawn is considered a faction. In other words, it's a mix of facts and fiction. But it's a brilliant book. You know, let me just read something here for you. So he says, my brother is also right when he asks if we are safe. We do not know. As far as the problem of abandoned property is concerned, it seems that the different governments have I'll take it from beginning again. Let me just start again slowly. My brother is also right when he asks if we are safe. Concerned, it seems that the different governments have made different arrangements for safeguarding the property. In the north, for instance, committees have been set up to look after the property, to collect rent on them and bank them so that they can be given to the owners when they return. And in Lagos, what arrangement is being made in Lagos? I am not too sure, but it would seem as if the same thing was being done in Lagos as was being done in the north. Sebastian paused and then remembered that he had on the radio only a few hours after the end of the war, nobody who had evidence of their ownership of any property would lose the property. That is the position all over the country. I'll read that slowly. Nobody who had evidence of their ownership of any property would lose the property. That is the position all over the country. If you had evidence, you know what I think? I think some people want to take over their brother's properties in Yoruba land. They now ask them for evidence. They didn't have evidence. Now telling everybody that Yoruba people are tribalistic and bigot because they didn't give them their houses. That has to be it. Someone says, Miss Moson says, oh, good to see you, ma. He says, my question is, can the Igbos be kind to other states as they were kind to them, if such happened? I even want to ask, when they chased out the Northerners, Yoruba people, by the way, you know Ojukwu did that, by the way. We don't talk about it a lot, but it happened. Ojukwu chased out every non-Igbo person. In the beginning, they said everybody was not from the eastern region. But if you were Igbo from the Midwest, you could stay. If you were Benin, Ishan, Yoruba, Urobo, Hausa, out. Chased everybody out. This was in 1967. No, 66. End of 1966. October, November 1966. Drove non-Igbos out. And his excuse was that he could not guarantee their safety. But in reality, what he did was he chased them out so he could provide a space for the Igbos that were returning. Where did I get that from? From the book by his own Attorney General of the Eastern Region, Nebel Graham Douglas. He wrote a book called Ojuku's Rebellion and World Opinion. That the idea was basically to create a vacuum for the folks who were returning from other parts of Nigeria. But he said, Nebel Graham Douglas, I want to I can read one more book before I go to, because if I just made the mistake of going into, not even mistake, if I go right now into the book by Shehu Shagari, we'll be there for a while, and I don't want to stay too long anymore because of time. You have been so good to me, Lord, I can't believe how you love me. You know what? I think we should have another part of this thing. You know why? There were two types of property. One belonged to fleeing civilians. Another one belonged to public officials who were found guilty of corruption. And that actually happened under Murtala Mohammed, during Murtala Mohammed era. And I think sometimes they conflate the two, and they do it intentionally, because Murtala Mohammed came much later, 75. So it wasn't even what happened at the same time, but they intentionally mix it up just to be able to, if you want to be a victim, you have to be a victim. But we don't have all the time to read that book. Gosh, man, I'm a bit torn. I apologize, I'm like this because of time. Give me a second. Let's stick to the one that has to do with 1967 to 1970, so that we don't start something that I can't finish. Let's read Yoshagari's book. You have been so good to me, God, I can't believe where were we? Good. Okay, let's begin with this. This is Shehu Shagari. The book is called Beckon to Serve. It was while I was in Tunis that he went to take part of. It was while I was at the conference that an official announcement of my appointment as Federal Commissioner of Economic Development, Rehabilitation and Reconstruction was made in Lagos. On my return to Lagos, I proceeded straight to Sokoto without reporting to General Gowon, so as to register my displeasure at the manner in which my appointment had been handled. Governor Farouk later urged me to overlook the matter and said that Gowon wanted me back in Lagos urgently to assume my new duties. I have made my point and therefore agreed to return to work. My tasks were made immeasurably easy since the second development plan had already been approved and its implementation had also started. At the core of my ministry's functions were post-war rehabilitation and reconstruction of the eastern states, which had been badly ravaged by the war. Besides the huge funds and efforts expended by the Gowon regime on relief and rehabilitation, massive aid in the form of food, medications, clothing, building materials, and various other assistance were provided by foreign governments, multilateral organizations, and non-governmental relief agencies, local and foreign, including some churches, including governments. State governments across Nigeria contributed food and clothing and medicine and sent to their brothers, right? Which is what you should do when your brother is in need. But those so-called brothers now say that your father did something and you're apologizing for nothing. You shouldn't. The British government, for example, helped to restore libraries and provided over 100 Bedford lorries and some 40 Land Rovers. I'm going to jump to the part that has to do with abandoned property very quickly. One problem that proved intractable was the issue of landed properties left behind by Igbo returnees to the former eastern region. The Rivers State, and especially its capital of Port Harcourt, where almost all the houses and 4/5 of the skilled jobs were hitherto owned and held by the Igbo, presented the most difficulties. Followed by the southeastern state, again Ẹkáàbọ and Cross River. The inhabitants of this area tenaciously resisted every attempt to return the so-called abandoned properties to their original Igbo owners. As former Eastern region minorities with deep-seated antipathy towards Igbo hegemony, they probably wanted to gain some advantage in their new state, at least temporarily free from Igbo competition. Following the intervention of the federal government, a few of the houses were restored to their owners, but many were nevertheless taken over by the government of the two states in question. Although successive federal governments have tried to ensure the payment of compensation for the sequestrated properties, this has not been fully resolved even as of the time of this publication. By contrast, authorities in the northern states arranged for rents on all Igbo properties to be paid into official bank accounts, which were then paid to their owners on their return after the war. The properties themselves were also eventually returned to their owners. The question of compensation did not therefore arise in the northern states. So, we read about the north, the west, the midwest, and the east. And from everything we've read, where the Igbos had a problem with abandoned properties not being returned to them was in the former eastern region. And again, I don't do this because I want to say, oh, see what we did, gloat. That's childish. But we should be informed because we are constantly subjected to falsehood in the hopes that we would have to concede certain things to certain people because we're trying to make up for what our folks, our parents supposedly did to their parents during the war. I was thinking about, and I came to the conclusion that the only reason that a person will be able to blackmail you to surrendering what's yours is either because you are ignorant or you are naive. And if it's ignorance, it's fine. We will all study so we can know what's happening. If it's naivety, please fix it. Nigeria is not a place where everybody is great, and it's good to assume that people are good until they show you pepper. The idea basically is that and they did it because they expected that those people that were coming back would have something to fall back on. The £20 they gave, folks see insult Awolowo for it, even though their fathers were not owed anything by Awolowo or by Nigeria. The £20 was an ex gratia payment that should not have been paid. Ex gratia means that it's a gift. But you see people saying they gave us £20 as though they want to share 20, as if the £20 was reward. Right? It was a gift that did not have to be given. You have cases of millions of Nigerian pounds put into banks, whether it was the African Continental Bank or the Cooperative Bank for Eastern Nigeria, where Awo himself intentionally made sure that money was deposited. If you read his own interview during the 1983 campaign, he mentioned about £3.5 million. If you read the book by J. Sawa Elago, go on the biography of a soldier statesman, they mentioned £5 million between those two banks deposited there so that people could be able to access it and start their businesses. Nobody acknowledges those things. £990,000 went to the Eastern region on a monthly basis as subvention. From the skies or from the air. It was something that was given by folks at the top. People have to learn to acknowledge good and acknowledge greatness and just be grateful. It doesn't reduce you. So if you can't talk about the £20 with gratitude, you can't talk about the money that was given to your state governments with gratitude, you can't talk about the fact that the government chose to deposit money in banks so that your parents will be able to access those money as loans from those banks, not to return to government too, so that the banks could also work. They'll take the loans and start businesses and hopefully return to the bank so other people can have access to the loans much later. You don't talk about that. You don't talk about the fact that money was given to the regions. You talk about the fact that people, regular citizens, contributed food and clothing and stuff to help your people. And I'm saying this to Yoruba people especially, and to all Nigerians. Love everybody, but know what your parents did. When it came to houses, region were refurbished, rented out, money was collected, and the money was given to the people who owned the buildings when they returned. In Lagos State alone, about 3,000 houses were so kept, and 250,000 pounds given to Igbos who returned. I say, if you read the book Lagos State, My Life and Service by Ubolaji Johnson, you'll find the details there. And the one that Zeke said in 1969, about 83,000 pounds was given to Igbos returning to Kano. This was end of 1969, just before the war was over. So the point is, love everyone, but know what your parents do, so that when they come with this nonsense, you know exactly how to respond. Like, I have no problems with you, but don't tell me to apologize for what Ojukwu should be doing. And the most painful part, that's the one I don't want to read because of time, but if I have time, maybe I'll even read it. The most painful part is that Ojukwu, or Daratoda Ogbesile, did not lose any property. And he was the one who taught you guys to be lying to everybody that, oh, they collected our property from us. Ojukwu was, let me not use that phrase, he was very close, almost doing whatever he had to do to get his property. He eventually got it from Bangida. Let me quickly read something to you from, there are two books. I'll read one. I don't think I can read the other for now, but if I have time, and I'm saying if I have time because our committee I have to be out like soon. We'll be here tomorrow, 4 p.m. if we're time, West African time. So please join us. I'll quickly read something to you from. One second. Awolowo and the Forgotten Documents of the Nigerian Civil War by Odia Feimon. I've read it here before. It's a very good book. You should get it. Awolowo and the Forgotten Documents of the Nigerian Civil War by Odia Feimon. It says here, it's a very short line. The other Kini Gogon is in Shoyinka's book. It says the General of the People's Army, referring to Ojukwu. The General of the People's Army had to wait till as late as the last week of General Ibrahim Babangida in office in 1993 to wrest his own abandoned property. We don't know about those who never had that luck. We don't know about the soldiers who could not get their pensions after the general got his own. It is the way the post-Civil War atomization of demands got covered up. Oh, sorry, take that again. It is the way the post-Civil War atomization of demands got covered up by a rev of self-interest that many like to present as the interest of the whole nationality. The truth is that those whom things happened, I'll take that again. The truth is that those to whom things happened and who hardly had a chance of happening to anything but suffered all the same never had champions. The point he's trying to say is that it was the very last week of Ibrahim Babangida's tenure that Ojukwu was able to get everything that belonged to him in terms of the properties that his father had. And since I mentioned the other book, it may take me a while. That's why I didn't want to open it, because I'm going to have to find it here. The Open Sore. But since I've mentioned it, I might as well look for it. Ah, good. God is good. The Open Soul of a Continent. This is a book by Professor Wole Soyinka. This is what he said. I wish I could read everything, because this particular section is called The Reversible Ikemba. Let me read part of it, and I'll go to the one that has to do with the way he got his stuff back. It says, such were the last desperate days of Babangida in office, and such was the cause that at least a sprinkling of intellectuals, a predictable section of the political class, moldy, call me comrade radicals of the mold of Uchechukwu Merije and rehabilitated secessionists, somehow found congenial to their individual ambitions. Since Biafra is a well-known subject in these parts, and the name, pate, and bed of Odumegwu Ojukwu, the leader of the breakaway enclave, did attain iconic dimensions in the universal imagination at par with the images of swollen kwashiorkor bellies of Biafran children, this recent history will be incomplete without tribute being paid to him for his role in these various machinations. Now I'm going to jump every other thing he did to focus on this old building stuff. Upholding the results of the elections, talking about the 1993 elections that Babangida was planning to cancel, which he eventually cancelled, by the way. No, let me start from this point. It was not really acting out of character when the Ikemba, who is Ikemba? Ojukwu. When the Ikemba began a series of courtesy visits to Babangida to express solidarity with him and to salute his courage in cancelling the 1993 elections. That's why, when Peter Obi was saying that Igbos lost after the elections, that they supported Abiola, I was like, even your Lord and Savior was telling Babangida that he did the right thing by cancelling the elections. And when the time of Abacha, when Abacha became head of state, what did Ojukwu tell Abacha to do? He told him to hang Abiola. When this video comes out, right, I'm going to put the image of the newspaper clipping that you will see it. It was not really acting out of character when the Ikemba began a series of courtesy visits to Babangida to express solidarity with him and to salute his courage in cancelling the 1993 elections. Upholding the results of the election, he declared, I'll tell that again, upholding the results of the elections, he declared, would have plunged the country into chaos, for it would have signaled a return to ethnic politics. The Ikemba's voice was also to be heard on the BBC, hysterically expounding the same thesis. In other words, he didn't say this in a room. This is not a rumor. Ojukwu was on BBC to tell the world that if they did not cancel the elections, Nigeria will be thrown into chaos and will go back to ethnic politics. The Ikemba's voice was also to be heard on the BBC, hysterically expounding the same thesis, backed by a species of logical proceeding that was anchored, it would appear, on the fact that Moshood Abiola's own people, the Yoruba, voted en masse for him. Never a mention by the Ikemba that Abiola also defeated his opponent in his own home base, or that he also scored handsomely among Ojukwu's own Igbo people. That was in Anambra State. But does any of this matter? Basharun MK Abiola won unambiguously, according to every rule prescribed by the National Electoral Commission. Perhaps, this is where we're going, perhaps Ojukwu's recovered patriotism is best understood by the fact that in the midst of the post-annulment crisis, Ibrahim Babangida actually found time to perform a magnanimous act of redress for wrongs long committed against our ethnic champion. One of the very last acts of the outgoing dictator was to sign a decree virtually on the eve of his departure from Aso Rock, restoring to Ojukwu the landed properties that he had somehow forfeited or had been acquired by the Lagos State after the Civil War. We read that from this book, The Open Soul of a Continent by Soyinka, and also from Awolowo and the Forgotten Documents of Nigerian Civil War by Odell Feymon. If there's any, the truth is, if there's anyone you want to be angry with, that's is Ojukwu. Don't bring your one-on-one to Yoruba people. And Yoruba people, again, you have no reason to apologize to anybody. Love everyone, respect everyone, but your parents owe nobody nothing. And Ojukwu got his properties back. He didn't lose nothing in terms of material stuff. The man went, I don't know if you call it exile or whatever, returns and began to he returned and began to support the same people he said he was going to war with, Shehu Shagari and NPN folks. It is well. You know the shame in all of these things. When this guy, after leading a lot of people to their death, when he returned in 1982, he returned to a hero's welcome. And those who celebrated him are the ones who tell you that your leaders are not good, and you believe them. Let's think well as Yoruba people, as Nigerians generally. Again, this is not an attack on anybody, but we cannot allow lies fester. Prophet Remi says it was because of his properties that Ojukwu supported the annulment of the June 12th election. Yes, it was there until a week or so to the end of IBB's tenure. He now got that property back. That was it. As far as the property was concerned, Nigeria, they could hang MKO. They could forget about the freest and fairest election in Nigeria's history. He just had to get his properties back. So the point is, we didn't have any abandoned property issue in Yoruba land. People got their properties back. People should be grateful to those who do them good, so that, you know, if you show yourself to be an ingrate, it'll be very difficult for people to actually do you a favor next time. It's just the way of the world. It's just natural. Those who took over houses, primarily in Rivers State, did so for the reasons that we highlighted earlier, which I don't want to repeat. Yoruba people, be proud. You're not perfect. You're not perfect people, to be clear. But we have nothing to apologize for, because our fathers did their best. And their best was, by any standard, those men were heads and shoulders above most people. But thank you very much for listening to that. We're going to have to run very quickly. It's past 9. And it's been lovely having this conversation. Prof. Remi says Shagari brought him back to counter Zik. No principles at all. Exactly. After calling Zik an old goat. May God forgive. It is well. Erobodo says we are as perfect as they come, Jari, Prof. But to be honest, I don't think you better be saying I don't think we don't appreciate our greatness, and it's good in a way, to an extent. So so that you won't take it, because you get to a point where, to be honest, if you really study Nigeria's history or even history generally, you get to a point you're like, I won't lie, it has happened to me, and it does happen to me. I'm not going to lie, and I'll tell you when it happens. It happens anytime anyone from the southeast uses that word coward, or say things like, those stereotypical nonsense they throw at Yoruba people. Whenever I hear it, or say things that have to be comparisons, like when you're comparing, I'm like, that's impossible. It is well. It is well. While we are all together having a great time, do not forget the history of your own people. May God bless you and keep you. Zaking says it's not good, bro, Busui. It's making us lose Yorubas to mere propaganda from other tribes. No. So I'm trying to get to the balance. I'm saying that on one hand, you know what you are, but when you're Jacko warrior, so that you don't, because let me tell you something. Let me play a video. Let me play you a video and tell me how you will react if you really go deep into who you are as a Yoruba person. How you will really react, knowing what the truth is. I'll play this video. It's one of the most nauseating things I've seen this week. Nauseating than this. But listen to this. I think he's even here right now. Listen to this and tell me what, if you know the history and how things went down, and maybe I'll even explain that. And I'm just because of what the person said in the comment section. Give me a second. I'll play from, so I can read to you what my response was to the whole thing. Are you ready?
Recently, the University of the West Indies is offering Yoruba language. So you can go to UWI and study the Yoruba language. For those of you who don't know, Yoruba is one of the tribes in Nigeria, and their language is called Yoruba. And it baffled me because I know that Yoruba tribes, and we are not the only tribes who were brought into the Western world, to be precise, the Caribbean, during slavery. Igbo people, Igbo tribe also were one of the tribes that were brought into slavery. Igbos were also enslaved. So Yui, why are you offering Yoruba language alone? Why don't you balance the equation?
If a person is not cursed with inferiority complex, do you think they will talk like this? If a person knows exactly their own history, do you think they will even consider in their wildest imagination to compare themselves with Yoruba people? Folks think life is about federal character and quota supply, a quota system. You know, when you hear quota system in Nigeria, you think of Hausa. You may not be totally correct though. You may not be totally correct. I'm looking for another one. I'm going to play it so that you have to hold yourself back sometimes, because it's as if you are talking to like a gnat. Like there's no. Do you know why? 8.3%. Okay, let me say it. Of all the Africans that were taken to the New World, the slaves that were taken to the New World, Yoruba people form only 8.3%. Igbos were more than Yorubas that went, because I mean, I don't want to go into the history of why they were more. It is well. If I have to, I will. There's a reason Yoruba people actually excelled in recreating their identity in the New World, in their religion, in their faith, in their music, in their clothing, in their food, so that today in 2026, if you go on the streets of Bahia in Brazil today, you can eat akara, and they call it akaraje till today. And they did that for two reasons. There was a research that was carried out in the 1850s and 1860s. There's a video I have on YouTube. Please watch this video. I'll see if I can find you the title. Please watch this video. I think it's going to really help to understand how. You know what? I'm going to play a version. I'm going to play a shorter version of it. Then I'll play the other video. You ready? Take a listen to this. Can you go? Let me just summarize by saying this. While the others went with their bodies, Yorubas had systems, structures that they replicated, whether it's in governance or in finance with a susu, or in music or in dance, or in communal living, or in community organization. That's what researchers found way back in the mid-19th century, when they were studying the phenomenon of how can you have 8.3% in the of the population, but you have influence that is not commensurate with your numbers. Like it's disproportionate with your numbers in this place. Why? You know what? I think I should read some things to you guys. Oh boy, I'm already speaking to. Let's do this way. I'm going to play the other video while I find you the page, because I think it's important to do this. I know where I started from. I started with how do you respond to this, knowing who you are as a Yoruba person. The only way you can respond to it is to be condescending. Unless you find a way to on a normal day. If you don't know, if you understand how they did it, you will be condescending. And you'll be right to be, but sometimes you just don't want to do that. I'll play the second video and find you the book. 2 books. History of the Yoruba by... Give me a second, let me think. 2 books. The Yoruba, The New History by Akinwumi Ogundiro, and History of Yoruba by Stephen Banji Akintoye. I'm telling myself, sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Let me play the second video while I find this stuff. It's another ridiculous nonsense from you know who. Take a listen while I find you that book or that page.
We have a drive on to rename places where our ancestors settled from. Right? But there was no name to place.
From the first day that I stepped my feet on the soil of Trinidad and Tobago, I felt it in my spirit that Afro-Trinidadians are from Ghana and Nigeria. We need to rename East Porospen villages with name from Nigerian,
Yes.
right? Especially from Nigeria.
Successfully.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
We have Oshobo here, but the Bitam Gardens.
Okay, but I'm gonna be name also
Yes.
Oshobo. All right.
So that's how we doing it. That's where we want to do. East Porospen, Yoruba village.
Yoruba village map.
Yes.
Listen, they are using Yoruba village. I want the Igbo village. I want Igbo. I'm from the Igbo tribe. This is really amazing, but they seem to have forgotten to add some Igbo names, because Igbo tribes were one of the tribes who were also enslaved and brought to the Caribbean. I need Igbo names.
We have a Sierra Leone Street. We have Majuba Crossing.
Yeah. Okay, really?
So we settled all over. The structure in which they brought us, we weren't allowed to name anything after us. So now, we are living.
Amazing. What about my sister?
Do you know the kind of insanity that a person must be experiencing in order to go to Trinidad and Tobago and hear them naming their towns and streets and whatever after Yoruba towns, Abeokuta, Ile-Ife, Osogbo, and so on and so forth, and you in your inferiority complex, which is essentially what it is, you then tell them that you demand Igbo name, not because of influence, but because you also have people that were taken to slavery. It's not based on numbers, it's based on influence and impact. And quantity doesn't matter when quality is speaking. I'll read 2 books I mentioned earlier. The more you understand Yoruba history, which we've not even, we do it sometimes, we're going to do more of it. The more you just feel, you feel like, I'm already feeling like it. I don't want to say some things. When some people speak and say, if Yoruba people have this, you should have it. It's repulsive. It's insulting. It's the same clown that's saying that because a university in West Indies is offering Yoruba language as a course, they must also include Igbo. Say waiting, federal character. You go to Canada, the banks have Yoruba language in some provinces. Then you go there and say, why do not have Igbo language? It is not Nigeria where you're doing quota system. You have no influence. This I'm going to read some things very quickly. Let me start with the Yoruba, A New History by Akinwumi Ogundiran. I'm going to make it very fast. Although the Yoruba were among the African cultural and language groups to arrive in concentrated numbers in the Americas between 1736 and 1850, they were not more numerous than many other major African ethno-linguistic groups. Overall, they accounted for about 8.3% of the over 12 million unchained Africans who arrived in the Americas throughout the history of the Atlantic slave trade. Of their three major points of disembarkation, they were not more than 12% of Africans carried to Cuba, and they were less than 20% of those who disembarked in Saint Dominic. It was only in Bahia that they constituted a majority, accounting for about 40% of the African disembarkments during the 19th century. Despite their relatively small numbers overall, no other African tradition or community of practice had as much influence as the Yoruba in the formation of the New World African diaspora culture during the 19th century. In other words, as many previous observers have noted, the overall gargantuan impact of Yoruba culture and political agency on the New World was out of proportion to their comparatively light demographic weight. Nevertheless, the increasing number of Yoruba arrivals in the Americas during the 19th century breathed new vitality into the lives of African cultures in the Americas. Their presence in large numbers also infused new socio-political urgency into the anti-slavery and anti-empire struggles in the Western Hemisphere. The reasons for this Yoruba historical footprints remain a subject of intense and exciting scholarly debate. I'm going to tell you the reasons much later, but here's the point I'm trying to make here. That overall, Yorubas accounted for only 8.3% of the 12 million slaves that were taken out of Africa. So it wasn't like we had more people. So it was not about, oh, we're also here. No, it's like, what was your purpose? What was your impact? What did you do? This is not about, if you have this one, you must also have this one, so that we can be fair. You know that nonsense we do in Nigeria? If you have somebody from here who can do something, but you have this person who cannot do it. But just to be fair, let's have it so that we can say that we are fair. And that's how you end up with 8 typists in a typist pool with only one typewriter, like the guy who mentioned, the gentleman mentioned last week. Now, he said that when you look at the influence across the Americas, whether it's in music and in culture and in the socio-political urgency and the way they worked with the anti-empire, slavery and so on and so forth, you begin to ask questions. How did they do it? So I'm going to quickly get to the how. So we know what happened, but how did it happen? And yes, you're very correct. Greater me in the comment section saying everyone wins a medal. The idea that we are in a place like Oprah Winfrey Studio, where they say you get a car, you also get a car, you also get a car because the other person get a car. That's not how life works. So everybody doesn't get a medal if you didn't run well. Let me read the other part to you now. Where was it? What was I reading? Okay, good. Oh dear. Oh boy. I apologize. I think I don't take time at all. So we've established. I saw it just now. Mumbo. So we've established that 8.3% of the people had more impact, and they said, and there's a particular language you use in this place. I think I kind of like. It said here that the overall gargantuan impact of Yoruba culture and political agency on the New World was out of proportion. That's wrong. Was out of proportion to their comparatively light demographic weight. Their impact was out of proportion to their demographic weight. Give me a second. I'm going to find you what I'm looking for. The second book. I just need to find the page very quickly. How did they do that? What was responsible for that kind of impact? It's like, you know how people say things like, we're going to name this place after Wole Soyinka. They now say, oh, but there's a person in our village who used to do dance and drama. Why can't you name that thing? Is it because it's not Yoruba? That kind of nonsense that people say, oh, why are you naming that the structure, the National Arts Theatre. Why are you naming it after Shoyinka? I have one man that used to do Drunken Master in my village. But because he's not Yoruba, that's why they're not picking him. Can you imagine? These people are very tribalistic. I think I found the page now. But we're going to run. This book is called A History of the Yoruba People by Stephen Banji Akintoye. I found it, but there's something I'm looking for. There's a page. Good. So where is that author? There's a particular author who did the work in the 19th century to try to understand the phenomenon, how Yoruba people did what they did. If I find it, then it will make my work a lot easier. You know, we didn't plan for this. I'll cut all these things out when we're editing. We didn't plan for this, but I just felt what that person said in the comment section is actually very, very important. And I think that not responding to these things go pewa. And you see Yoruba people also doing that nonsense. Oh, if we did it for them, why are they not doing it for the other people? That we not all one Nigeria. You are not smart. I'm in the book. Oh, I'm just looking for the page. Just give me a second, please. Or a moment, I should say. You are... I found the book. I just need to find it. I found something I need, but I need to create... This is what happens when you want to do things you didn't prepare for. You know what? Umbo. Okay, I think we can start here. I need to, one second, I need to switch this audio source, please.
Just as we're somewhere.
All right. I found something somewhere we can start. There's a particular author whose name was, two of them actually, and I saw it just now, but I just don't know what I did to change the page. But please, can you hear me on TikTok? If you hear me on TikTok, that means you're hearing me on YouTube as well. Please Please confirm if you can hear me. Thank you. Just want to be sure. Okay. Let's not waste more time, because I was going to run 40 minutes ago. Can you imagine? Okay, so folks on YouTube can hear as well. Thank you very much. Macmillan on YouTube says, me too, I'm feeling big. Ah, dear. Hello. Sorry, can you hear me now? Is network cool? Can you hear me now, Abi? Okay, thank you. So let me just go back a bit. So it says, the total number of Yoruba taken to the Americas as slaves from the first in about the late 16th century to the last ones in about 1867 has been estimated to be about 1.12 million, representing less than 9% of all Africans taken to the Americas. The other book said 8.3%. Less than 9%. Okay, so a little less than 9% of all Africans taken to the Americas as slaves during the 3 centuries of the trade. Of this number, nearly 80% were taken away in the century between 1750 and 1850. Yoruba slaves were taken to most regions of the Americas, from the area of Chesapeake Bay, or is it Chesapeake Bay, in North America, to that of Rio de la Plata in South America, as well as to many of the islands of the West Indies. Various sizes of Yoruba slave groups emerged in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia and Florida in North America. Some of the countries of Central America, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama, and others, Guyana, Suriname, Venezuela, and Brazil in South America. He's talking about how they got there. I don't want to read all those things because that's not where we don't have that time. I just want to go to how they did it, and it's crazy. Okay, found it. God is, can you imagine? See what I've been looking for all the while. Okay, now let's read. I've said it before, but like I said, it's important to also read the sources so we know where we're coming from. It's not like someone's just making anything up. So they're trying to make themselves feel happy. It's more than that. But it's good to make yourself feel happy as well, but it's more than that. Let me read to you here. Okay, go back just a bit. I'm excited about this actually. So it says here, of the contributions of the cultural heritage of the Yoruba people to these processes, talking about the process of civilization of the New World. Of the contributions of the cultural heritage of the Yoruba people to these processes, a fair amount is known today, and the overall assessment seems to be that the cultural impact of Yoruba people on the evolution of African American or Creole cultures was greater than the numbers of the Yoruba slaves could justify. There were only 8.3% of the total population of slaves, and they're saying that their very significant contributions to the civilization or to the evolution of African American or Creole cultures was great, but it's actually greater than the numbers of the Yoruba slaves could justify. In a recent study, David Eltis writes, within coerced African migration, Within coerced African migration, the Yoruba were among the latest to arrive, but we were neither the most numerous nor the least scattered over the Americas. In other words, they were concentrated in some spaces. Reasonably precise estimates for other groups will eventually become available, but it is probable that the Igbo and some West African... Guys, please, 1 second. It says here, it is probable that Igbo and some West Central African peoples were larger and more heavily concentrated than the Yoruba. The Igbo in parts of the British Caribbean and some of what have been termed Congo groups in southeast Brazil. Yet, the impact of the Yoruba speakers on Creole societies that emerged in many parts of the Americas appears to modern scholars to have been strong, and in the light of the evidence presented here, out of proportion to the relative size of Yoruba arrivals. It's a phrase you see in every mention of this phenomenon. Out of proportion to the numbers, they are not as many, so how come they had so much impact and influence? In comparison, that is, with other African groups, they contributed considerably more to Creole or African American civilization in oral traditions, especially as expressed in songs, religious rituals, stories, proverbs, and so on, as well as in various modes of family and societal structures. This is where we're going. The main explanation for this is to be found in the strength of the civilization from which the Yoruba of the New World were extracted and taken away into slavery, its strong family and settlement traditions, its urban orientation. It's urban, like we're urban in nature. We have cities and towns. It's not about, So it says here, the main explanation for this is to be found in the strength of the civilization from which the Yoruba of the New World were extracted and taken away into slavery. There's something that the late Archbishop Benson Dawson used to say: a lizard in Nigeria will not become an alligator in America. If it didn't day, it didn't day. The reason they were able to do what they did abroad was because of the civilization from which they were taken. So it's not about the fact that we are many. We're not singing we'll be many. It's about impact and influence. Quality, not quantity. The main explanation for this is to be found in the strength of the civilization from which the Yoruba of the New World were extracted and taken away into slavery, its strong family and settlement traditions, its urban orientation, its social and associational traditions, its innumerable cooperative, collaborative, and support institutions, its highly developed artistic culture as expressed in the visual arts and folklore, and its strong religion. The view of the Yoruba voiced by Louis Antoine M. de Vauteuil in 1858 is similar to views expressed by many other foreign observers in that century. He wrote that this is what somebody wrote about Yoruba people in 1858. It says they were guided in marked degree by the sense of association, principle of combination for the common weal has been fully sustained wherever they have settled in any numbers. In fact, the whole Yoruba race may be said to form a sort of social league for mutual support and protection. An additional explanation was the widespread cultural influence which the Yoruba established over much of West Africa before and during the centuries of the slave trade. To the east and west of Yoruba land, Yoruba traditions and myths of origin and Yoruba ideas of the importance of Ife early influenced the Edo and Aja. As states and trade grew in these places, the Yoruba language, as to be remembered, developed into a sort of common language, especially for commercial purposes. No doubt a product of the widespread impact of Yoruba trade. The expansion of Yoruba cultural influence reached its climax in the era of the greatness of the Oyo Empire. Oyo being not only an empire builder and trader, but a mighty carrier of Yoruba culture far and wide. Founded and led by a mixture of Yoruba and Aja elements, the kingdom of Daomi minutely mirrored Yoruba cultural institutions and traditions, all of which were later reinforced by Oyo conquest and overlordship. In particular, through the Daomi and other Aja people taken as slaves across the Atlantic, the influence of Yoruba culture was already significant in a number of places, for instance in Haiti, long before the arrival of Yoruba slaves, and considerably assisted the growth of Yoruba cultural influence after that point. Bahia province was one of the richest sugar plantations areas of Brazil, beginning from the 16th century. Most of the sugar plantations were established in the area of soft marshy soil and so on and so forth. But when you get there, they had the common religion, Yoruba facial marks, surviving Yoruba personal names, belief in common descent from Oduduwa, and belief in Ife as a common sacred ancestral home. You know, so Yoruba people that sometimes can't see being can roll one lenojo meta. If you don't understand what that thing does to you. You give birth to children, they know where they are coming from. Do you know how, when I'm talking with my children, when I'm talking about our family and our family tree, our genealogy, I see pride like in their face, and you can see them happy. You see the joy. They know where they are from. I can tell you, Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Abraham begat Isaac, Isaac begat Jacob, Jacob begat the 12, and then I can explain that to you biblically, but I can also say that to you in our own family tradition. It's the same way when it comes to this idea of Ife. You are not looking for identity, you're not looking for origins, you know where you're from, you just build. Your job, the job of the children, or even you yourself, is to build going forward, not going backward to look for what is not lost. One of the reasons these people were able to coalesce and build together was because they had an identity that was already cemented in their being. The point is, the person who is saying here that why didn't they have their own ethnicity, they did not even have a common identity until the Europeans, the British, gave them one. You had your own centuries, if not a millennia before, in fact a millennia, more than a millennia before these things came along. And the person would then go to Trinidad and Tobago and tell them that, why would you have only Yoruba names? You must have Igbo names. Who are you? That's what people do in Nigeria. By throwing tantrums and saying, if you're doing for this one, you must do for it, even when you're not qualified for it. It's like having a football match and you say all the players must come from all the ethnic groups in Nigeria. Do you know if Nigeria want to, when you go to play football, do you not see a lot of Igbo? Do you see anybody say, oh, why Igbo, why Igbo? No, because for whatever reason, it could be nepotism, but for some reason, they can play. Let them play. Not to be saying, oh, because you have this here, you must have this here. It makes no sense. When it comes to culture, when it comes to influence, when it comes to structure, you cannot be mentioned. Not because people hate you, but because you don't have it. And I'm not mentioning anybody. You can fill in the gap. This is how Yoruba built what they built in the Americas. I don't want to make a full session out of it, but we did a session a while back, and I think you should watch it on YouTube. I'll look for the name for you so you guys can enjoy it like fully. If you go on YouTube and look for, I saw it just now. Okay, look for in Busiori's section, look for how did the Yoruba become the blueprint in the new world. Maybe we should listen to it one of these days. How did the Yoruba become the blueprint in the new world? It's on YouTube. We went deep into it. It's not based on federal character or quota system. It's based on impact and influence. Somebody asked me which book was it? I read two books. Yoruba, the New History by Akinwumi Ogundiran, and Yoruba, the New History by Akinwumi Ogundiran, and the History of the Yoruba People by Sebibanji Akintoye. So the reason you cannot have a new world what Yorubas are having is because your forebears did not create the kind of structures that Yoruba forebears created, not in the new world, in Nigeria, in their homeland, so that when they were taken out, even though it was a terrible experience and was bad, they had something to fall back on. They knew who they were, they knew whose they were, they had the cultural identity, they had the framework, they had their world view. All they had to do was tap into it and recreate it abroad. And that's why last week, for instance, there was a float in Sao Paulo in Brazil with different Yoruba deities. And the best way to understand, by the way, if you're a Christian, and I saw what happened last week, by the way, on social media, especially on X, where you have this people now fighting over a religion. If you're a Christian or a Muslim, or you're not doing traditional worship, if you're a Yoruba person, the best way to explain that thing to you is that if you went on the street of, say, Greece today, and you see them talking about Achilles, you see them talking about Zeus, and things like that, you have gotten to a place where they are talking about the heroes in their culture. In reality, and I want to say this to you, but I'll talk about it later. In reality, when you hear people talk about Shango, Ogun, Yemoja, when you start hearing those names, think of your heroes. All these people were heroes before they became some people's object of worship. Stop thinking it's a religious thing. That thing is a flow to celebrate ancestors. And when we say ancestors, we're talking about your heroes. Imagine they put Wole Soyinka there and Awolowo there, and you are looking at the people that you look up to. That's the idea. The only difference is the era. So in our generation, who do you think you can create a float for that you be carrying like that people will celebrate? Those who have gone ahead of us: Fela, Awo, Tashulani, Gani Fawemi, Crowther, about Macaulay. You have all these people, Dorothy. You have all these people that you can look for to H.O.D. Davis. You can celebrate those ones. So to you, because of your proximity to them, a lot of them passed last century in the 20th century. Because of your proximity to them, you still understand their humanity more. The father, and this is a very, very important thing, by the way, the farther you are from heroes, the more deified they tend to become. Especially once you introduce the religious bit into it. But as a Yoruba person, you can stand out and just enjoy the celebration of your own heroes. And I've said here before, I'm Ogun's son, and it's not a religious statement. It's an ancestral statement. And when you see those things, and I think everybody's always just going to the extreme. One is saying everything here is mysticism, the other one is saying everything here is demonic. But in reality, it's about celebrating your fathers. And you don't have to spiritualize it. Anyway, all of that to say that you can see the float in Sao Paulo. You can't replicate that based on federal character and quota system. If it didn't day, it didn't day. May God bless you. All right, we're going to have to call it a day. It's 10 o'clock exactly. Very long. To be fair, we started very late, and we also had some issues. So I was trying to make up for it, but I said I don't over make up. But thank you very much for being here. We'll be again tomorrow at 4 p.m. if it's West African time. We brought some people up earlier, and now I really have to run. If you'd like to support what we're doing, please use the Olori. I'm going to bring Olori up. Oh boy. Okay. Mr. Bolton, you know, let me just bring our people up, because I've not seen Mr. Bolton in a very long time. So we're all going to be spend extra minutes. So let's start with the lady amongst us. Yes, ladies first.
Thank you so much for Ekale. This is I saw the same video that you brought up. In fact, when I saw it, a friend of mine who is Trinidadian was the one that even told me about it and told me to go see it. And I was like, is this guy a joke? Yeah, she is, in fact, she has Yoruba name up to the last name. And in Trinidad, they have a place, there are places with Yoruba towns, you know. Same thing in Puerto Rico. There are two cities, Loíza and Carolina. In fact, when you go there, you think you're in a typical Yoruba town. The same olele that we eat, same thing. And it basically says a lot about the structure of the Yoruba culture. And that is why, you know, other folks in Nigeria think they can compare themselves to us. Because our forefathers, thank God, you know, thank Olodumare, forefathers have laid down things in millennium. You cannot compare that to some group that were just known by the British in the last century or 2 centuries, or even less, you know? So when we say this is why we as parents, we need to really impact this knowledge upon our children and those who have grandchildren. You know, when I tell my son this history of Yoruba, he knows about Ifa, even though, you know, we may be Muslims and some people in my family are Christians, but we know the importance, just like you said. Do not mix it up if you're either Muslim or Christian. These are heroes, and we should be proud. And that is why I'm really saddened about these some of our Yoruba bots, that when they're demeaning our heroes, our culture, they don't stand up to say no. This is unacceptable, you know. But this is, you know, in fact, I'm going to sit down with my son and watch this episode on YouTube as a way of lesson. I've been doing this with him, you know. He's college age student. So he's you know, this is very important. It really makes me so proud that, you know, yes, sometimes some people say you have no thing about whether you come out as Yoruba or whatever. But I thank the Eledumare for making me a Yoruba woman. You know, down through my lineage, just like you, I can get my lineage all the way to Ile-Ife originally. And we should be proud of that. We should celebrate that. And that does not mean that we demean other people. No, we don't. In fact, that is one of the things, the ethos of Omoluabi, that it makes us have that humility, understanding, and it cannot be replicated just by you wanting to be a Yoruba by, I don't know, by living amongst us, you know? So it's something I really thank you for bringing this subject up today. I really, really, really appreciate this. And I'm so happy about the Bai election. So every indigene now is now a Ronu, thanks to Yoruba people. Thank you.
Yeah, so Bagironu. Yeah.
Bagironu. Thank you.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you very much for that. And everyone mentioned earlier, I said Ogun's son. You know, I think we're going to have sessions, and maybe I'll even write a book on it. The idea of Orisha and how people should view them, especially with knowing that we have diverse faiths. I'm going to do a proper session on it. You will understand how a Shango man would view an Oshun person. This thing is just that our problem, one of our problems is that we have over spiritualized everything. So that one guy is looking at everything like, Heru. The other one is like, demon. Me. Whether it's Odudua, Ogun, Romeo, 3 of my ancestors are deities in Yoruba land. I don't bow, right? But I celebrate them. You may not see me carrying something to offer, but they know that if they can tell, they know that I am proud to have come from their loins. And if I call myself Omodua, Omogun, Omoromio, I am proud to say it. The mistake I think we are making on just about every level, I will have a session on this thing, is that we are almost all of us, let me put it that way, almost all of us confuse culture with religion. And the more you study this thing, the more you discover that so your culture, your religion, whatever religion you want to do, does that change the fact that your father gave birth to you, even if your father doesn't believe in your religion? There are Christian fathers they are Muslim for the most part. The president is a Muslim, the wife is a Christian. They could have a child, for instance, maybe a Christian or a Muslim. Does it change the fact that the mother is the mother and the father is the mother and the father is the father? When you mention that father, does he think Islam first, or think, if they mention your father right now, the first thing that comes to your mind, is it the religion of your father or the nature of your father? We'll have a session on it. As a Yoruba man, as a human being, if you mention somebody's father, if you mention my dad, if you mention his name now, the first thing that comes to your mind on a normal day is about his person. It's not about his faith. So how come when you mention Ogun, the first thing you think about is the religion, not about his person? Because you don't know his person. That's why. The only thing that comes to your mind is what you know. You don't know the person of Odudua apart from Ilefe, which of course is great enough, but you don't know that he was a businessman. You don't know that he understood branding. You didn't know that he changed the game totally with silicon. You don't know that he understood trade to the point where he was able to facilitate trade on a new product that nobody had access to all across Africa, all the way to the Mediterranean. You don't see him through that perspective. Everything you see is just religious, spiritual. So when you hear Odudua, everything is like, me fe gba àwọn let me kukun you, or oya fori balẹ̀ ko bo. It's more than that. It's more. Or you hear about Ogun, and the only thing I think that Ogun nire Olashanle fi mo Olashanle fi mo kino obora Olomile fe jebe Olashanle fi mo kino obora. That's what you know. What does it mean to fi mo kino obora? Is it really a spiritual statement? Olashanle fi mo kino obora. What's Imo? They are talking about raffia, grass. Who would do that? If not a hunter. If the hunter goes to the bush to hunt, he has to camouflage. Palm fronds, yes. He has to camouflage. He has to put something on that makes him blend with nature. Ofi mobura, the palm fronds, that's what you get from the palm tree, the leaves. Ofi orishishima, ofi bora is essentially creating a camouflage in that space. In other words, you see that with a hunter, you see that with a warrior. And if the hunter kills great game, he's essentially bathing himself with blood. So in that statement, what are you really hearing? You are hearing that this person is a great hunter, this person is a great warrior. But no, what you are hearing is that you don't even understand the fact that you can actually there's a word I want that is in my mind. I don't want to use it because it's going to sound very, very deep. Unless I don't want to explain. You can actually make him a role model in Warcraft. You study him and understand the fact that he had this thing with iron, right? He had this thing with iron when it comes to forming things, when it comes to, being creative with metals. So essentially talking about a technologist. But no, all we are thinking about is that Tobati Hamba Yuja Makupa Fejewe. Eje Kolo Fefiwe. Imotofin Bora, Imoti Wofin Bora, you are just thinking of spiritual. The guy is using it because he wants to go and fight. No, Zaking, I'm not doing somebody's better than anybody. I'm talking to all of us. I can assure you, you're saying the people that are spiritualizing are doing something. If you spiritualize, you can never do what they did in Brazil. You can never do it. Because for them to do some of the things they did in Brazil, they had to remove some things. You saw it. If you do all this, you cannot do. Let me tell you something. What they did in Brazil is not different from it's the same thing. It's a procession. When people on social media say Yoruba in Nigeria can never do this, I'm like, where did you guys grow up? I grew up in Ibadan. You see Alakpan Shopper on the road. That's what they're doing in Brazil. It's the same thing. There's nothing special. Your fathers have been doing this for centuries. Ololu, thank you very much. Great Ami. Ololu, Alakpan Shopper. You find the Egun that Tomashe parade, and you have many of them dancing in front of them. It's the same thing. But would you create a float like they did in Brazil? No, because for you want to be true to the past, and not knowing that the people in the past also innovated. We think we are purer. Well, it's not today's topic. We think we are purer when we stick to something that happened in the past, not knowing that the fact that at that point that you call the past, that's not how it started. It's like becoming an Amish. You know Amish? I watch a documentary, so I love watching Amish documentary for whatever reason. I just find it fascinating that the group would decide to lock themselves into the 1950s. We can't use washing machine, but we can use the one they used to use before then. We can't use cars, but we can use diesel fueled engines. I'm like, why not go back to the days of old? Let's even go back. How far back do you really want to go? The point is, we have to also allow for innovation. But that's not even the point. I'm not trying to lecture anybody. I'm just saying that generally speaking, the reason some of us are away from it, like because every time you look at it, every time you look at it, all you're saying is that it will affect my faith. And I get it. Because once you spiritualize it, listen, it's a spiritual thing. But I've said this before, and I think it's probably where to start. Maybe I'm going to do it one day. Imagine I create a float, and you have fella. By the way, did you notice what happened in front of fella's grave some weeks ago? VDM and Sheon, They killed a ram. They bowed. That's how you start. That's how you start. That's what happened in some cases. If VDM and Sheon create, if Sheon since is the son and is probably closer, or maybe both of them create a religious order, you don't think that people are going to follow them? The Church of Fela becomes a deity. You are, but we know Fela. Were we not there when he had 20 something wives at the same time? We know Fela. But once you do that, you have cut me off from Fela. But you cannot cut me off because I will remember. Music Babai now. I'll just stick to him as a musician. But if you want to do like show and VDM and worship and do all those things, you can do whatever you want to do. But you cannot make me see Fela through that lens. And you know that what I believe him to be. But here's the sad part, and this is the reality. Oh boy, I'm saying too long. I keep saying I'm saying. So let me put it this way. What do we know Fela as? This is going to help us to understand this whole Ogun thing. That's why I can call myself Omo Ogun, Omo Orunmila, Omo Oduduwa. Let me explain something. Fela is a musician, was a musician. Fela is a musician. Everybody knows he's a musician. VDM and Sheon decided to kill a ram. Let's assume they start a religious order. This is not about whether it's good or bad. I'm just explaining something. It's not exactly what happened because the state was involved with our own in some cases. In some cases, it will start like this. Sheon and VDM begin to sacrifice. Let's say they start doing it every week. They create a priesthood for it. They start doing liturgy. This is how we chant. This is what we do. People begin to get fascinated by that. They go to that shrine. They ask for things. I want to become famous. Fela, do it for me. It happens. And these things can happen. The spiritual technology behind it, I won't talk about it here, but it's a fact. Something happens. They begin to grow. They now have a church of Fela. I used to listen to what get enemy. I still enjoy my music. In the beginning, they will play Fela music in that church of Fela. What get enemy. After a while, some people might get to the point and say, we don't really care about this music. Fela is bigger than just music. And they begin to focus on the worship alone. I still see him as a musician. Nothing they do will change the fact that he's a musician to me. Imagine I am now Made or Made's son. I will still see Fela as grandpa. Made will see Fela as grandpa. But the followers of VDM and Sheon will be seeing him as Fela the God. There's nothing the people that are in Fela, Church of Fela, there's nothing they will do to now tell Made that Made, stop calling Fela grandpa. It's not your grandpa. He's our God. He doesn't care. He's his grandpa. His relationship with him is familial. Then there are people whose relationship with is musical. He's a music guy. So it's like Ogun was a warrior, he was a hunter, he was a technologist. If you want to create a worship out of a spiritual order out of it, that's okay. But we ain't doing that. But here's the point. Where's the meeting point? The meeting point is that both of you will agree that Fela was a human being, he was a musician, he was great. Both of you will agree, including the people who are now worshiping I'm using an example, of course, who now do the worship on a weekly basis and go to Church of Ella, but they all know you also agree he was a musician. So what that means basically is, and here's where I'm going, I'm a Christian. Zach King, stop it, please. Stop it. Stop. What is religion? Religion is a system of worship. When people say that Yoruba people did not have religion, you don't know that you are insulting our fathers. That they did not create systems. Of course, they created systems. Once you have rituals, you have liturgy, you have priesthood, you have order. That's religion. It's a system of worship. Unless you're not worshiping. But here's the point. I'm not even going into all of those things. The point I'm trying to make is that where is the nexus between those of us who enjoy what I don't get enemy and those who want to worship Fela? The nexus is that we can still acknowledge his greatness as a musician. In other words, I'm a Christian, but I don't know if Fela was a good musician. He was a fantastic musician. I'm a Christian, but Ogun was a fantastic technologist. The person that wants to worship can worship, but I cannot now say I don't know Ogun because the only thing about him is the people that, if you don't want, and I'm using the word worship loosely, by the way, B-boy is more than just, it's not just about worship, but I'm just saying it loosely. If you don't want to worship, don't worship or don't do any spiritual things about it. But you've got to, so when they talk about your heroes, you've got to think about the humanity, their greatness, what made them what they were. It's like now talking about Awolowo. If I decide to start an order now, Ijoawo, it does not change the fact that Dr. Tokumbo Awolowo, that's his daughter. Or Sheya Awolowo, he's his grandson. But I can create an order and say, okay, this is how we're going to be doing for Awo every week. And I'll be right to do it, by the way, because, I mean, who comes close to Awo? In recent times, in the last 200 years, tell me one person, as far as politics is concerned, political leadership of Yoruba people in the last 200 years, who comes close to Awo? Or who will Awo be second to? Nobody. I can use that as the basis of creating a spiritual order, but does not change the fact that there are people who will not join that order, but will still acknowledge Awo as the greatest statesman. And I think that point is where Yoruba people have to meet. Instead of saying, you must do this, if you're not doing, you're not really Yoruba, you must, or Gabaruwe, I am Ogun's son. I've never had to talk about anything, but insult Ogun in my presence if I will not deal with you. Because to insult him is to reduce us as a people. You are essentially reducing your civilization by not acknowledging those who have gone ahead of you. But if you want to do the worship thing, that's fine. I mean, that's your right. But you don't have to make me do it. And this is the beauty of your, I mean, by the way, in my Oriki, there's Ogunde, there's Ifa there, there's all kinds of things there. If a person who is born into that family, which is my family, now decides Obatala ni from Abo, ẹbí mi tó toríkì wá ní Ògùn nù, wọn nílé lọ náà, wọn nílé lọ, wọn sọ pé òun ṣọmọ wa mọ́. Ẹ̀yin máa mẹ́mu tẹ́ bá ń ṣe kínní, Ọlọ́bàtálá wà wọ́n mẹ́mu wọ̀. Irọ́ ni o tó bá ti ṣe kínní yẹn náà, because we assume that every day thing in Yoruba land is the same. They're not the same. The taboos of this one is different from the taboos of that one. And this person says, this is what I'm doing right now, and I'm not going to follow that particular one. Does that person stop being Yoruba, or does that person stop being a member of your family? I think the session I said we're going to do, we're already doing it. We'll have a proper session on it later. Anyway, Yoruba people, let's just... It is well. We will do well. We will do well. Erobodo says, I'm tempted sometimes to think he, Awolowo, might have been the reincarnation of Oduduwa. Let me tell you something I believe. Am I supposed to say it here? Let me find a way to say it. Let me say it this way, and I say this as a fact. Papa Awolowo, how long is coming? He's already with us. I mean, there are many amongst us. Awo. I don't know how to say it, so it doesn't sound like a spiritual kidney, but let me just say it this way, because we have to be careful now. Awo, and this is a fact, Awo meditated on Ududua. Go and read what is said about the need to name that first group Egbe Omodudua. Read it, digest it, you meditate on it, and you understand why they did what they did. He wrote it there. Here's the funny thing, Awo has this thing of where he will write exactly why they did what they did. It's his autobiography. He won't, but you have to other things will help you understand how they are written. But the point I'm trying to make is that he definitely meditated on the person of Odudua in the light of his fatherhood over Yoruba people. People can choose different things. You can meditate on Odudua as a businessman, and he was a brilliant businessman. We should talk about these things. You can meditate on Odudua as a statesman, and he was a statesman, brilliant statesman. You can meditate on him as a warrior, and he was a warrior, powerful one. You can meditate on him as a family man. He had wives, he had children. The part that Awolowo concentrated on was his leadership. No, was his fatherhood. His fatherhood. And Awo did it to the point where he became what he was thinking about. I'm going to stop here now so I don't get us into something else. But the point I'm trying to make is that Awo didn't think, there was a need in Yoruba land, and the only person that could have solved that problem at that point would have been Odudua. And it was a need of unity. And based on that fact, Awo tapped into that, and himself and his other people like Akerele and the rest of them, and F.R. Williams and the rest of them created Egbe Omodudua. We are the children of Odudua. Today, that was 1945. This is not 17th century. That was 1945. Today, 2026, you and I can boldly say we are the children of Awolowo. You can use the name Awo to do exactly what Awo did with the name of Odudua. This thing is not about let us worship. I mean, you can do whatever you want to do, but it's beyond all those things. If you want to create a social order in Yoruba land today, which name are you going to whip up? It's Awo. It's Awo. Would it matter if there's a shrine to his name? It would not. But I'm glad there is none, so that everybody can gather there without this thing of Kilombo, because it be like saying that the only thing that should say Kilombo, we can all at least a critical mass, a lot of us can, maybe not all of us, but at least a substantial number can converge on that bit and say, okay, on this matter, we will get there in Yoruba land. We'll get there in Yoruba land, and we'll be very proud of our heroes. When you hear Ogun, you respect those who want to look at it from a spiritual point of view. You respect them. But as a person, the same way you can think of Steve Jobs, why can't you think of Ogun like that? Why must all your heroes come from outside your space, especially when you have heroes amongst your own people? Have you ever asked yourself, when they were creating Electricity Commission or Corporation in Nigeria around independence time, maybe after independence, why was it that they began to use Ose, Moshe, Kini Shango? Why did they use that as logo? Is not Shango the deity or God or whatever anybody wants? Is the fact that we had the person who could channel electrical powers, and it was Yoruba, and it was Shango. So if you tell me about Nikola Tesla or tell me about Thomas Edison, I could also tell you about Shango. Shango in that sense is not necessarily, I tell you about Jesus Christ, I'll tell you about Shango. It's not every, and that's why they're always fighting on social media. Don't warn everybody. If you tell me about Muhammad, I can't tell you about Shango. It's not about that. Well, those who want to let them do it. But while they are doing that, when you hear Thomas Edison, know that somebody knows how to conduct electricity, and he knows that electrocution. How did they know this thing? What if you are studying electrical engineering? What can you get from his actions to prove whatever we need to do in 21st century? That's how we built on what our ancestors have done, not by saying it does not float, you have to worship. And if you want to worship, by the way, again, I'm using the word worship loosely, but if that's what you want to do, that's okay. But it's beyond that. It's beyond that. And all of us, sometimes I think all of us we do the same thing. We are, what's the word? That's what I'm looking for. I've got to get that word before I go. We are guilty of what we accuse others of in most cases. Sincerely. God will help us. God will help us. God will help us. God will help us in this Yoruba land. The day you wake up, you understand why Oje means a lot to our Legun. Why Ayan means a lot to our Nilu. And you begin to understand that this thing is more about trade than faith. It is well with us. Thank you very much for listening to this last bit. It was, in fact, the last 1 hour. I don't know what I'm still doing here, but I hope you took something out of it. May God bless you and bless Yoruba people. May God bless Nigeria as a whole and every ethnicity within our borders. May God bless Yoruba people within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. We have Yoruba people in Benin Republic, in Togo, in Ghana, in the Gambia, in Sierra Leone, in Brazil, Cuba, in the United States. Where again? Venezuela, Argentina, wherever they are. We will do better than our forebears. We're not saying all this so that we can say we are better than these other ones. To compare yourself with another Nigerian group and say you are better than them shows that you also have inferiority complex, because there's how say me and you, what's the basis? Your mates are not even around. When you hear China went to China, they are talking to you. You're looking at people like King Bao in China. About now English, how much is also buy. Egbe yo sintosi. Oladegbe adebe. Another she that Amadebe Lagbara alone. We will not disappoint our forebears, because if our Lord just wakes up now, all to do, I just comes around, comes to us and say, he relatively what 13 Elowe, we have to have something tangible to present, right? Thank you very much for listening, and I hope nobody feels bad about anything. It is well with us. We will do well and we'll make our forebears proud. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks to those who tabbed and shared and liked. We're on 86.7k likes. Thank you very much for getting us thus far. Thanks for the gift. I saw heart means, I saw all kinds of gifts earlier. Thank you very much for your support. If you'd like to support us financially, please use the bank details on your screen. It does help us have these sessions every day. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, was saying that, what does it take to do this? And I was like, do you know that every time you're looking at me on the phone, there are several, right now, there are several devices, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different devices, lights, we have to power. It takes a lot to do this every day, but I love it, and I think it's important to do it, and I'm sure you also enjoy it. So please support us if you can. And that doesn't have to be about money, by the way. You can also like the like the videos that we have on our platforms, whether it's on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok, on Twitter, wherever you find us. Please like and share. And we have many things to learn, but I hope that at the end of the day, we're not just learning for learning's sake. We are going to effect a major change in our generation. Lágbára Ọlọ́run. Adafunwa. I saw a video. Someone was playing drum. I think it was about one of your bag. The person was crying. And I thought to myself, we only have this experience. We have this experience in spiritual things. I've had that experience on our before. Will not fail. We'll do the spiritual thing, whatever spiritual thing you want to do it. But there's a way you think about your ancestors. If you know them, if you study them, you get to a point. It's like you think about your father. I don't know what kind of relationship you have with your dad. You can think about your dad to a point where you cry from sheer joy. Like your own dad. I mean, that would happen to me when I think about my dad, to be honest. There's a particular thing you get to, like, there's ecstasy, almost like something like you are inspired. You leave that space like you want to do something. That's how we should be when we think about our Oduduwa, or Shogo, or Kun, or Ya, or Shun. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with somebody. There's a book that talked about the evolution of Oshun's dressing. She was a woman. She was a human. And I was saying that Ifa says, Eyanindorisha. She was a woman. This is what she used to dress. It's in Ifa. This is how she used to dress. This is how she dressed until this thing happened. When she was barren, this is what had to happen. This is what Orunmila did. This is what happened after she gave birth to children. This is why people began to pay obeisance to and venerate her. This is how they got to be. By the time you study it, even the process of creating that religion is so fascinating. You're like, who are these people? The process is enough to actually give you ideas of startup. You just be thinking of a startup like, from clothing. Why do they all wear white? Why do they wear beads? Because you wore beads. You see beyond just faith. It's amazing. We'll have those sessions. Let's have our anthems, Nigerian anthem and Yoruba anthem. Thank you very much for being here. We'll be here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Not this long ago. I'm doing this because, let me tell you the reason I just think I should talk about it. And my kids went to bed while I was supposed to leave a long time ago. They were looking at me. I was like, Mumbo, I think Big Bang. You've not been here since Wednesday, but we can't make up for all those days in one session anyway. All right, we'll be here tomorrow 4 p.m. if your time West African time. So please join us. We're gonna have a great time together. May God bless you. May God keep you, and may God cause His face to shine upon you. And Yoruba land will make progress in all things. We have some challenges right now with security. All those things will be sorted. We just need to tap into things that really matter. May God bless you. Let's have our Nigerian anthem, and then we'll have Yoruba anthem. God bless you.